I'm a Year 12 student from Holy Cross College, and I've been involved in raising money for LifeLink for a few years. What are some other ways students that are graduating or have graduated can stay involved in LifeLink?
I think the fact that they've been involved in something through the school, hopefully that sticks. That they remember that the church is about many things. It's about education. It's about the parishes and what we do in our parishes. It's about hospitals and all sorts of different works, and those works that are supported by LifeLink. So maybe as they finish their studies, they go to university maybe, and they get a degree, and they themselves think, now maybe there's something that I could do as an adult. Perhaps be a volunteer because it'll be okay, and perhaps even support, through the parishes. They'll continue to hear about LifeLink. They'll perhaps see it on different forms of media, as we were talking about earlier. And it might just jog the memory and say, this is really something that's worthwhile and that I'd be prepared to give my time to. So I think, firstly, being, in a sense, given the opportunity to know what LifeLink does, by being in our colleges and secondary schools now is great. It helps us learn about what we want to achieve through LifeLink, but it is something that they could get even more involved in later on. Yeah.
Just for Archbishop Tim Costello, I'm Lucas from St Albert College, and I was just wondering if you could run us through a regular day of being the Archbishop.
I'll give it a go. Probably the honest thing to say is that there's no such thing as a regular day because every day is very different. Well, let me talk to you about what is happening today, for example. So I'm here this morning with Bishop Don and with all of you. So the morning is here. I'll go back to the office. I don't think I've got anything between now and lunch at 1 o'clock. After lunch, I've got a couple of appointments with a couple of priests who have asked to see me about different issues. I've got a few letters to write. I've got a whole lot of things to sign because I'm the legal representative of the Archdiocese, so everything has to get signed by me. So I always spend part of a day just putting my signature on a whole lot of documents. This evening, I've got to go to a dinner for the board and the trustees of Notre Dame University. We do this once a year, so it's a chance for me to listen to them and share with them some thoughts about how important it is for us to have a Catholic university here in Perth. So that's today. Tomorrow, Bishop Don and I, together with two other priests who kind of form the leadership team, we'll have a meeting pretty well all tomorrow morning to talk about particular issues in the diocese. In the afternoon, I think I've also got some appointments with people coming to see me. So it's that kind of thing. Weekends, of course, are very different. This past weekend, for example, on Saturday afternoon, I drove to Coolin. I don't know if everybody knows where Coolin is. It's about 3.5 hours drive down into the southwest from here. Because a church in a tiny little place that some of you may have been to called Calgaran, which is just near Hyden and where Wave Rock is, if any of you have ever been to Wave Rock. The church was damaged a couple of years ago in a mini cyclone, so it's just been rebuilt. So I went down there to solemnly bless and open the restored church. So it's, varies really from day to day and from week to week. In the way the church is structured, it's the bishops who kind of are the chief leaders of the diocese. So the leadership of the diocese is invested really in me and with Bishop Sproxton to help me and this other group of people. So, we have to kind of try and have an understanding of the whole breadth of what goes on in the diocese. So Dr. McDonald, for example, together with Dr. Sace, will be coming to see myself and Bishop Sproxton and the other Western Australian bishops on Friday for a meeting to fill us in on how Catholic education's going. But having been here this morning, we already know the answer to that. It's going beautifully. So really, it's all kinds of meetings, often in the office, or I'll go out to a parish or out to a school or out to an agency and encounter people there. It's very much a people kind of thing, you know, being with people, meeting people, listening to their concerns, listening to their issues, seeing what we can do to respond. So, and, you know, I'd be a very bad archbishop if I didn't also mention that behind all of this, every day there needs to be time for prayer, for celebrating Mass, to make sure that we keep ourselves well grounded in our own faith, and as we were saying earlier, with our eyes fixed on the goals that the Lord sets for us. So part of each day is nurturing our own prayer life, our own faith, reading, continuing to study about our faith, all of that. So it's a pretty varied life, very privileged way of life, really, not in the sense that we live in luxury, but privileged in the sense that we get to meet so many people, you know, are privy often to their struggles, their difficulties, their challenges. Yeah. Does that kind of answer the question? Good on you. Thanks.
What impact do you hope the Jubilee of Mercy has on society, and why not celebrate every year as a year of large-heartedness and kindness and giving?
Great idea. It's a great idea. I think that when the church has a thing like a special year of mercy, I think the real reason for it is precisely just to kind of bring to the surface something that should be there all the time anyway. So the idea of having a year of mercy isn't that, okay, in 2016 we'll be merciful, we'll be large-hearted, and then in 2017 we'll go back to being selfish and cruel and all the rest of it. It's really just to highlight something that should be there all the time. And, you know, there are so many things to think about in life that we need these special occasions to remind us of the stuff that really matters. In terms of the impact that it will have, I think that it'll have an impact at a number of different levels. And the first impact will be on the church community itself. One of the things that has been interesting for me to listen to is the priests who work at the cathedral talking about the fact that this year there's been this amazing increase in the number of people who are coming to the cathedral to celebrate the Sacrament of Reconciliation. And that's all to do with Pope Francis' insistence on mercy and the readiness of God to forgive us and to help us, all of that sort of stuff. If the Year of Mercy has an impact on the church community, the right sort of impact, that will then flow over, because we all live in the real world, you know, we're all part of the wider society of Perth, of WA. So if we're changed by the Year of Mercy, then we'll begin to have an influence on other people, and I think it'll be like, it's the classic thing of throwing a stone in the river or in the lake and the ripples start to move out. So that's what I'm hoping. And I think we're already starting to see it happen.
What powered you to become a priest?
I suppose to answer the question specifically using your language, I'd say God powered me to become a priest. I first thought about becoming a priest when I was in grade 6. And the reason why I thought I might be a priest was because I grew up in Melbourne, and there was a young priest working in the parish where our family lived. And I just admired him, you know. He's still alive, actually. He's quite an elderly man now. I just admired him. He was a very gentle kind of man. He was a very welcoming kind of fellow. Father Brown, his name was, not the Father Brown on TV, but another Father Brown, Joseph Brown. And you know what it's like when you're young, you see people and you kind of look up to them and you start to think, I'd like to be like him when I grow up. I think that's where I first thought of being a priest. I then went on and off the idea all through secondary school. Sometimes I thought, yes, I will be a priest. Other times I thought, no, I don't want to be a priest. I want to get married, have a family, all of that sort of stuff. So when I left school at the end of year 12, I didn't start my training for the priesthood straight away. I did a few jobs, got together a bit of money, eventually decided to do what I'd always wanted to do since I'd been a little kid, which was to be a teacher. So I went to teachers' college. It was a Catholic teachers' college. And while I was there, this idea kind of kept growing in my mind that I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I knew I wanted to teach in a Catholic school. And as I thought about that, it kind of grew inside me that the reason I wanted to do that was because sharing my faith with other people really mattered to me. I really did want to be a teacher, but this idea of also being a priest stayed with me. And then I'm a bit slow, I have to confess. So I went to a secondary school that was run by an order of priests and brothers. But it took me about 3 or 4 years for the penny to drop to think, well, you want to be a teacher, you want to be a priest. Hello, you could join the order that taught you and you could be both. So when I was about 22 or 23, I started my training as a priest. And of course, by then it wasn't just that I wanted to be like Father Brown. The whole idea of God asking me to do this with my life had just grown in me. And I don't know if any of you have had this experience, but particularly the older people here and the teachers and the other adults, sometimes it's hard to explain, but you just know inside you that if I don't do this, I won't be able to be the person I'm supposed to be. I presume, I don't know because I'm not married, but I presume that in a sense it's a bit similar to when someone falls in love and they just know that this is the person that I want to spend my life with. I think it's the same kind of thing, except for me, I had this thing deep inside me that this is what God wants me to do, and if I don't do this, I'll never be the person that God is asking me to be. So I know that's a bit airy-fairy, but that's a little bit of the story of how I decided to be a priest. And I think, it's like anything in life. It's had really fantastic moments. It's had some very difficult moments. But I've never lost that sense deep down that if I'm going to be the person God wants me to be, this is what I have to do. So that's my thing. I don't know about Bishop Don if he wants to share anything.
It was in my last year of high school, in year 12, that this idea of priesthood sort of came. When I was in the last year of primary, because of the experience of being taught by a Christian brother who was very, very inspirational. He'd only been teaching for 2 years, and he told me a couple of years ago he had no idea what he was doing. And he apologised, because he said, I went into that classroom without having any formal preparation as a teaching brother. I just finished my novitiate, I suppose it was, and he went straight into teaching the next day. But so for a while I was thinking about that. Maybe that might be the calling that God has for me. And then that quickly disappeared when I went into high school, and then, as I said, in my last year at high school, this calling to priesthood seemed to dawn and wouldn't go away. It kept being there in the background. Anyway, as things turned out, I went to the seminary, and then the questions were: is this really where I should be? Is this what I should be doing? So I spent the next 6 years asking those questions of myself, gradually having that reassurance, I suppose, that comes as a gift, I think, from God that, this is where He wants me to be, and no matter what I feel was lacking in me personally or even academically, that this would be okay. God could work with this, and it was sort of on that basis that I finally applied and was accepted to be ordained a priest. And throughout the years, now I've been a priest, 38 years, I found that, God was right. He could do amazing things with the little that He had in His hands from me. And And I'm very grateful for that, because it just, again, is a reassurance that whatever happens tomorrow, I know that I can count on that same strength that he gives me. So that power that you talk about there is something that I certainly experience every day. In firstly feeling that call, and then each day receiving that strength to do what I'm meant to do.
What are some ways that we can get our community to be involved with LifeLink?
I suppose we've touched on some of those things already, but I think fundamentally anything good that happens, I think, in the church, often it comes from the work and vision of one person. So it often just comes down to what you are able to do within your community, and just letting people know about today, about what's happened today, what you've learnt about LifeLink, and then perhaps sitting down with a small group of friends perhaps and say, now, what could we actually put together as an activity which would really be something that everyone in the school would love to do, and in that way give them the chance to understand a bit more about LifeLink and why they're doing it. So just simple things like that. Often it just comes from just one person having that clear vision of what they want to do, getting people together, planning, and then coming up with something which everyone will find fun to do.
As Bishop Sproxton was just speaking, then it just popped into my mind that maybe it's worth saying. I don't think we should ever estimate what one person can do. I was just thinking as the Bishop was speaking about Mary MacKillop. She's a saint now. She's the first Australian saint, so she kind of becomes a legendary figure, and we kind of put her up on a bit of a pedestal, and all of that's good. But Mary MacKillop was born in Fitzroy in Melbourne. I used to walk past the place where she was born every day on my way to the college where I was teaching. She was just an ordinary girl in an ordinary family, a migrant family who'd come from Scotland. She in one sense didn't appear to be anything special, but she had a dream, she had a vision, she had an ideal or a goal that she kept her eyes on, and she achieved incredible things. Now, none of us might end up being as well known as Mary MacKillop, but she's a good example of how people who are just ordinary, everyday people. She grew up in Australia just the way we grow up in Australia. Not all of us did, but many of us did. She went to school the way we went to school. She used to have to walk through the rain to get to school the way we have to do the same thing. Just an ordinary girl from a pretty ordinary, basic, not particularly well-off family. And yet she had a dream, she had a vision, she committed herself to it. And the impact of Mary MacKillop on Australia, not just the Catholic Church, but Australia generally, is extraordinary. So it's not an answer to what more can we do to support LifeLink, I guess, but it is just a good reminder to us not to underestimate ourselves. And particularly going back to what Bishop Sproxton was saying about his experience of the power of God being with him each day, if we just relied on ourselves, thinking we had all the answers and all the talent and all the skills, we probably wouldn't get very far. But if we team ourselves up with God, if we kind of make a partnership between ourselves and God, what we can't do on our own, we can do if God's with us. And that's true for every single one of us. You don't have to be someone who's going to end up being canonised as a saint. So I don't think we should ever underestimate our capacity to make a difference. It all goes back to that question of what kind of heart we've got. And for young people, what kind of heart am I allowing to develop within me? That's very much in your own hands. What kind of person are you shaping yourself to be? I think that's really a really important question, particularly for young people.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I'm from Mercy College. And is there a youth or a type of group you regularly meet with to get ideas from?
regular meeting with youth. Did you say? Yeah. Yes, there's a couple of ways I could answer that, and then Bishop Sproxton, who is kind of really the delegate for young people here in the diocese, might want to add to it. But we do have what's called the Catholic Youth Ministry here in Australia, led by a young woman who used to be a teacher actually at Mazenod College. I think Mazenod's here, aren't they? Somewhere? No? Anyway, Anita Parker, her name is. She heads up our Catholic Youth Ministry. She has a board of people that Bishop Don chairs. So there's regular contact between our level, if you like, of the diocese and young people. But the other thing that happens is that one of the things that bishops do is that they go on what's called an official visitation to a parish. Now, we don't get to every parish every year, but so that means you might go on the Friday and you'll spend Friday, Saturday and Sunday in the parish. Normally, it would always be a part of that parish visitation for the bishop to meet with the young people of the parish, particularly if there's a youth group or youth mass on a Sunday night or something like that. So we try our best to listen, and opportunities like this are a great chance too for us to be in touch with young people. But as Brett was saying earlier, we probably need to work a bit harder at getting lines of communication between, say, ourselves as the bishops and the other leaders of the diocese and young people. We haven't got it right yet. How do we really engage with young people and listen to them and understand what your needs and concerns and dreams are for the church and for yourselves? So we've got some things in place. We could certainly do much better. And of course, our Catholic school system should be an opportunity for you as young people who are part of our church to be in touch with us in one way or another. We just have to get the structures right. Yeah.
The only other thing I'd like to mention is that you had the leader of the opposition at Mercy College yesterday, and there was a very good cartoon in the West Australian today about Mercy College. You'll have to have a look at it. I won't tell you what it was about, but have a look at it. But yes, I'm the bishop who has responsibility for really encouraging Anita and her team at CYM in the work that they do. There are two very important works that they do. They continue gathering people who wish to come on a Wednesday evening to prayer and having a supper together and that type of thing. So that's a weekly thing. But I think the most important work that she and her team have been able to accomplish is the establishment of 38 parish youth groups. Now, this has been achieved over the last, I think, 3 to 4 years. So there's been a lot of work, and her team have been available to help parishes get their youth groups started and to support the leaders of those youth groups as they keep meeting and as they get more confident in doing this sort of work. So they're a great resource for the work of youth ministry in the diocese. So we're very grateful for that. But all of this seems to have come off the back of World Youth Days. So Anita herself would say that she's a World Youth Day junkie. You know, she really has received so much for herself by going to World Youth Days, and it was really out of the World Youth Day that she helped organise for our diocese some years ago that we saw in her what was needed in a leader for youth ministry. So she eventually was the one that we appointed as the director for Catholic Youth Ministry. And she supported, as the Archbishop has just said, she's supported by a board of management, and they again are there to support her and to help her keep focused on what are the real needs for our youth today and how we are to respond parish by parish to those needs. Yeah.
Other than Catholicism, which religion or denomination are you most attracted to?
That's a very good question, because Catholicism is the only one I've ever known. However, I grew up in a family where my mother was Catholic and my father was not. So I was always aware that not everyone followed a particular faith or religion. And I think that accounts for the interest that I have in the other churches and to a smaller extent the other faiths. The most contact I've had with another faith other than Christianity is the Jewish faith. And that's been more through friendship than anything else. Haven't had very much to do with the Muslim faith because I just haven't had the opportunity, I think, to engage with any of those congregations that they have in Perth. But I've been involved in the Council of Churches and the Heads of Churches, which is a regular meeting that the heads of the Christian churches have I think it's every 2 months we meet together. So it's because of that experience that I had in my family that I perhaps have had this interest in other faiths. But I must say I'd find it very hard to choose another religion other than the one that I really know well. Yeah, thank you.
Our school would just like to say that in an effort to spread the message of LifeLink Day, we've brought a camera along and we will write an article for our newsletter, and we were hoping that today all schools could do the same to spread the message and get involved. Thank you.
Good idea. There's a challenge for everybody else to take up. That's a great idea. Well done.
If you want, I just had a thought, Archbishop. We could take a leaf out of Ellen DeGeneres' book and we could do the world's largest selfie. If you had your mobile phones, you could get up on the stage. I don't know how we'll do this, but we'll get you in the middle and somehow take a photo. Would you like that? All right, maybe I could get my photographer Ron to organise that for us from up on the stage and we'll get copies out to you all. We'll do that just when we finish, all right? It'll be a semi-selfie. Last question, Archbishop.
As this launch is for the young generations and us, how do you manage to engage with the older generations to support LifeLink?
I suppose the major avenue is through our parishes. So as you would have seen in the presentation, that we go to both the schools and the parishes. We have the LifeLink Day, which is focused on the schools, but we do have 2 other appeals that are around Christmas time and mid-year, which is where we approach the parishes. And Brett's got a database of people that he also is able to send out material to let them know what we've been doing with the funds that we've raised and the works that have been achieved. And so they're probably the 2 major ways that we reach out. Brett might want to say something about the broader community, if there's been much that we've been able to achieve in that way.
LifeLink was originally started to promote to our Catholic community all of the agencies that are supported and established by the Church. Notwithstanding, as Archbishop and Bishop have said today, LifeLink agencies provide services to anyone in need throughout Western Australia, not even just located here in Perth. About 34,000 families and $54 million in welfare is delivered. So we have a right, I guess, to go out to the general community. One of the things that I guess we need to work on is building the profile or the brand or the awareness of LifeLink and what it does. And we're doing that very much through you. I think one of the great assets, if I can give Jamie a plug, our communications manager for the Archdiocese is standing out the back. I'm not sure if you're aware, but there is a fabulous new Archdiocesan magazine called The Record Magazine. It takes the place of the Record newspaper that used to exist. and that's only just recently been launched by the Archbishop, and we're getting very good feedback from that. We hope that that magazine grows in its distribution and takes the message of what the church is doing for people in need within the general community out to the general community. But we encourage you to tweet, chatter, Snapchat, do as much as you can to help spread the word as well. Do you tweet, Archbishop and Bishop?
No, I don't tweet.
The
But I'm always open to learn.
Very good. Archbishop, would you like to just perhaps say one last word, and we'll...
Okay, yep. And shall we take the opportunity also just to bless the meal while we're at it? Yeah, good. Okay, well look, it's nearly time for lunch, so just before we do break for that, I'm not going to make another long speech. You've heard more than enough from me. I do want to thank Brett Mendez and all of the team who've worked so hard to put today together, to thank Dr. McDonald and Bishop Sproxton for their really important contributions, but most of all to thank all of you for coming. It's the last week of term. I'm sure your minds are already starting to turn either to holidays or to all the study you have to go into do while everybody else is on holidays. So to take out a morning and to come to this is a special gift to us. So I really wanted to say thank you to all of you, to your teachers, your principals, everybody who's been prepared to engage with us to make today a success. If you can take back with you that one word and that motto and think about what that's going to look like in your school community, I'd really be grateful. So the one word, of course, is large-hearted. And the challenge is, can you be at the forefront of making your school a large-hearted school full of large-hearted people? And if we do that, then we can transform our Catholic education system into something even better than it already is. We can therefore also begin to transform our society. We'll never get rid of the need for LifeLink, but we can make an enormous difference in people's lives. So I just want to say thank you to everybody. And perhaps just before we finish, Brett's got a few last things to say, but I might just say a prayer of blessing over the meal that we're about to receive, asking the Lord to be with us, to bless us and to bless our efforts for LifeLink. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, we thank you for all the gifts with which you fill our lives. We thank you first of all for the gift of life itself, for the gift of our belief in you, for the special gift of being part of Catholic education, and for the opportunity to be here today. We ask you to bless us, to bless all of the members of our school communities, to bless our families and to bless all those who are dear to us, important to us. We ask you to bless all of those people who work in our agencies for the good of others and all the volunteers who assist them. And most of all, we ask you to bless all of those people who are in one way or another come to us seeking our help, our generosity, and the possibility of having a glimpse of the face of God through what we do with them and for them and beside them. Bless the meal we're about to receive. Keep us safe as we travel back to our schools, and help us to make this year's LifeLink a really important success, not just for our sake, but for the sake of all those whom we will help. And we make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Would you all join me in thanking Archbishop and Bishop?